like Ray Charles, man. I'm like, this is so awesome. I can't sit still. Wow. Well, we are in the fourth week of a series called Life Lessons. Now, Kristen and I, when we first came to the church last year, we went to a series of a few Celebration of Life services, and we're like, oh my gosh, these people are amazing. I wish I had known them. And so Kristen really fostered this idea, but we're like, wow, Kristen's like, let's do a series called Life Lessons where we get to know the people around us and how precious they are before it's a celebration of life. So I'm glad we're not doing your celebration of life service, Clay.
Yeah.
So something happened to you when you were in the fourth grade that changed your wiring. Could you tell us about that?
Yes. 1963, President Kennedy was assassinated in November. And 3 weeks later, December, Friday the 13th, 1963, I was in fourth grade, and, fourth graders don't watch both ways when they run across the street. And so Mother let me out of the car at school. I ran out across the street, and I got whacked by a car. And pretty bad. I was pinned under the wheel. It wasn't a big car, but it was still a car. And my sister saw this, a few years older than me, and she came over and she moved the car off of me. So I had a pretty bad concussion, and I started realizing, actually I wasn't really conscious of it, but I was having trouble in school. I couldn't learn how to read very well and to take notes the right way, and I just wasn't keeping up. And but I found that if I drew pictures in relationships between words, it would speak to me, but it wasn't the right way of doing it. I kind of had to hide it because back then in the 60s, you're taught one way is the right way. So, but yeah, that accident really, it was a problem, but it also opened up a different way of expressing that has, over the years, really, for me, become a gift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I've noticed in you, a little over a year ago when we first got here, pretty soon on, Clay and I had a cup of coffee down the road. And I was, in the meeting, my takeaway was either A, got to get Clay to come on staff if I could get him to take a pay cut, or get him on the board of trustees so that we can all benefit from the way Clay sees relationship, the way he sees engagement. And you had a decent, successful career, but what happened in 2007? For me, if you don't recall, in 2007, I worked for a subsidiary of Lehman Brothers, and on a conference call in August, exactly 11 years ago, right about now, in the middle of this conference call, they shut down the whole division. It was a year before Lehman Brothers finally filed bankruptcy, which is the largest bankruptcy in the history of the United States. But in the middle of the conference call, I knew it wasn't good when the BlackBerry they gave us stopped working. It went offline. It's kind of a sign. But what did 2007 bring for you?
So I had spent many years, climbing the corporate ladder, and that's what we guys are taught to do, climb the ladder. And I was pretty tired. We took vacation, and we went to Jamaica. And while I was there, I realized that there was something going on with my heart. And I didn't say anything to anybody, but I'd spend my time out in the woods, and I like to make primitive crafts with my little Swiss Army knife, and so that's what I would do, and I'd contemplate where life was. And this incredible peace was surrounding me, and it's one of those mystical experiences that's hard to put words to. And I leaned pretty hard against the veil out there. When we got back, I was rushed into the hospital and I had a quintuple bypass. And I turned out okay. I was jetting back and forth to New York City. My office was on Park Avenue and 32nd Street at the time. And after convalescing for a few months, I flew up there, and this was at the end of '07 when things were really taking a nosedive. And I was there, and I looked out my window at the Empire State Building and said, I've never been up there before. And so I went up, and I looked down at my office down there, and I was standing up there, and I said to myself, metaphorically, I've made it to the top. I'm at the top of the Empire State Building, and there's my little office. And it's almost killed me. My heart's been broken open. I've spent years depressed, not knowing why, but with that drive to climb. And I sit up there and I says, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? When I got home after that trip, I got a call and they laid me off. Yeah, everybody was getting laid off. It wasn't personal. So I came to learn. So, what do we guys do? We double down. It was the first time since I was 16 and first started working that I was out of work, that I hadn't earned a paycheck, even through college. Double down and go after it. Let's get back out there, beat our head against the wall, get back into the job market. And I beat and beat and beat for 2 years. I never lifted my head up to say, oh, gee, nobody else is getting a job. And I took it personal. And it took me down. It really did. Hard. And those of you who've been out of work, the anxiety that it brings. And I hit bottom. I was hospitalized. And my next job was at $9 an hour part-time at Office Max. So I'd gone from the top of the Empire State Building to an hourly job. So that was probably more than what you asked for.
No, I was hoping, otherwise I was going to have to stretch it out. No,
Well, I say this, that on January 3rd, 2010, about 9:20, I walked in the front door here at Unity. You see, I had decided, and with the help of Laurie, she said, you've got to change your energy, man. You got to get out. You got to get out. And so I started going. I went down to the Episcopal Church downtown for the 8 o'clock service. And I'd run up here for the 9:30 service. And I'd head over across town in the early afternoon. I'd go to the Austin Recovery Center for a service over there. And if you've never been, you think this is wild here. You got to go over there. I'm serious. I call that churfing. But I landed here, and this is, I felt like I'd come home. How many of us feel that way? Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you. When I was in seminary, I read a book called, this is a great title, Why Men Hate Going to Church. And it goes back to early on, the way we develop. Young boys don't develop as quickly as the younger girls when it comes to reading and especially speaking out loud. And so in elementary school, boys start feeling shamed and less than. And there's this wiring also in young boys and young men to be the provider, to be brave, to be strong. And something else I learned in this book is that over the last 150 years, Western Christianity had become more and more emasculated over the years. so that women would feel safe dropping their children off in Sunday school, for example. But spirituality was becoming more and more this way, but men are like foxhole buddies. We do stuff, we do work projects shoulder to shoulder, like soldiers, not in a feminine way per se. And why don't you tell me something about the establishment of Men's Fellowship Network and how that came into being?
Well, I had been a prayer chaplain. After about a year, I became a prayer chaplain, and Scott Chambers and I would meet, and a couple other of the male prayer chaplains, and we would say, well, what is this about prayer? How do we pray? And what is holding a sacred space all about? And that was real foreign to me, but as the year went on, I began to open and move and began to understand what it meant to open my heart. And it was at that point that I started realizing, well, gee, if I need that, you need that. You need that perhaps too. So why don't we get together? You know, we don't get a chance. We don't get a chance to be in our hearts out there. You know? Brene Brown. Yeah, Brene Brown, she had given a lecture, and she tells a story on a TED Talk that this man walked up to her and said, well, so you only interview women? She said, well, yes. And he said, well, that's convenient. What about us guys? You know? Let me tell you, he shared with Brene, he said, my wife would rather see me die on my white horse than to fall off. So where do I go? You know, I can talk to my wife and we can go deep, but there's still another level there that only another man can connect with. But we're not allowed to do that. That's showing my vulnerability. Yeah. And, but we have to, in order to connect with that. We have to learn. And that was what was bubbling around with me, and that was a strong influence on starting the Men's Fellowship Network.
Yeah. I remember the moment that I fell off my horse in front of Kristen, and it was shocking to both of us. And, you know, in relationship, and it doesn't matter the gender of the relationship, but in a relationship when somebody falls off their horse, how does the partner react? Do we respond or do we react? Are we triggered or are we going to support and to love? You know, Clay, this is a part of this, and show the next slide, and I want Clay to tell us a little something about this.
So this is how my mind works.
A little something about it.
Now you know why Lori has a hard time with me. Well, for me, it's all about relationships and putting pieces in context. And Joseph Campbell, you know, said a mandala, you know, is a circle, and it's a circle where you're at the center and you put the world and your universe in context. And for me, reaching out, you know, the ages of time, the yugas, the precession of the equinox, you know, the 25,000-year wobble of the earth, and, you know, so I'm stretching out there, ancient megalithic structures, you know. I'm trying to put all this into context with where I am, you know. Well, Marianne Williamson said, fear is to love as darkness is to light. And I was just arriving at that realization myself, and so the axis in the middle, fear is to love as darkness is to light. And I can find myself anywhere in those continuums when I'm in fear, survival, love on the other side, being coherent, passion and intention. Those are all drawn out there, and they're all in relationship to one another, so it speaks to me. Mm-hmm. If you write it down this way, forget it. But a picture, for me, says it all.
Yeah, and when Clay first came onto the board, he did a little workshop where he showed us his mind mapping, which was pretty amazing. We'll get to one of those slides later, but in what you've been able to bring to the Men's Fellowship Network, there's a little ritual, but I think some of this goes all the way back to when you were at A&M, wasn't it?
Oh, gosh. So we're all, somewhere along the line, us boys are, think one of these days I'll be a leader. And leadership manifests itself in so many different ways. Servant leadership is what comes to mind. And when I was at A&M as a freshman, after they shaved our heads and put our little uniforms on us, and they marched us over to the Memorial Student Center, they pointed up onto the wall and they said, memorize this verse. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friend. John 15:13. So what all the craziness that goes on and all that we hear about what goes on over there, at the very heartbeat of that is the greater love. I would lay my life down for you because I know you would lay your life down for me. That's vulnerability. Went on to graduate, and in the Marine Corps, that manifests itself tenfold. You think of the tough Marine, it's all about heart. It's all about heart. It's all about my brother. And that's the essence of servant leadership. And it was that servant leadership that we applied in the corporate world and that we apply inside within the Men's Fellowship Network.
Mm-hmm. What happens at 11:11 every day?
One night we were sitting there, and some of you guys remember this evening. We can be pretty shallow. You get 18, 20, 23 guys in a circle and all talking on the topic of sharing on the topic of male spirituality. And we had been speaking about holding sacred space, and one evening the conversation just slowly ebbed into a silence. And nobody felt the need to talk. And we sat there almost for 5 minutes. Peace. Finally, one person said, "What just happened?" The guy said, "I don't know. But I was thinking about you." "Oh, well, I was thinking about you." "Well, yeah, I was kind of holding space, And another guy said, "Hey, let's set our phones for 11:11 so that every day at that time, our phones will go off and we'll hold space for one another." And you see out in the foyer out here at 11:11, you'll start hearing these chimes going off and guys reaching into their pockets and stuff. But during the day, and they'll go back to what they're doing, sending energy to you, and I know somebody's got my back. For me, sometimes it's like, well, I'm on this phone call. Hang on just a second. Okay, I'm back. But time is infinite, and those few split seconds are my connection with my brother. So that's what 11:11 is all about.
Awesome. In meeting Clay and getting to know him a little bit, it's I don't know that I've ever met a man who's a tough guy that is also in touch with feminine energy to the degree that Clay is, to bring that out in such a healthy way and to make it safe for men to open their kimono and share. And he brings that energy wherever he goes. It served him in the corporate world, through Motorola and whomever else, and it serves you today. And I'm just really grateful for what you've helped this community with. Here is one of the mind maps that Clay was exposed to, all the Vision Core things and the Vision team and all the history of what's been visioned for the last several years. And they gave it to Clay to put together, and he synthesized all those different thoughts, put them together in this cohesive thumbnail sketch of the direction of this church and where we see that we're going. And I'm just grateful for the gifts that have been given Clay in that fourth grade accident that we're all the beneficiaries of. But I would like for you to tell us something about engagement and what that means to you.
Oh, gosh. It's all about engagement. We all talk about being connected. I'm connected with you and you're connected with me, and metaphysically, we're all connected. So when we talk about coming here on Sundays to be connected, well, hey, we're already connected. We don't have to be here. We're already connected. So that's kind of a given. To me, it's about engagement. It's about tapping into, and I wasn't being facetious, 21,600 life years of experience when you take the age of every person in here and add it all together. That's what it comes to. And it's only when I engage beyond the surface, hey, how you doing? How's your brother? And off to the next. It's when you look a little deeper. What's your dream this next year? Oh, that's my dream too. It's about engaging. We don't learn that and we don't connect that and realize that there's so much that we can learn from one another through our life experience. And I go back to Monday evenings. Somebody will be talking and they will say one phrase or one word, and another guy in the room will go, oh, I'm not the only guy that feels that way. Wow. Or there's a business connection made or another. But it's only when we are engaged with one another. And that manifests itself in so many different ways, whether it's, over coffee out here, whether it's volunteering, being in service. Those are manifestations of being engaged, but that's what you really are looking for. That's what I look for, to connect beyond the surface. And I think this is such a rich environment, and I'm just grateful that I can be a part of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And every opportunity that we have here to engage will further our lives. Through the fun singers getting together, they're getting to know somebody they're standing next to on the riser that they didn't really know before. And by volunteering or bringing cookies or whatever, you're engaging with the people in the kitchen. You're building a relationship that could last a lifetime. You could meet your future spouse. But anyhow, I just want to say thank you so much, Clay, the guru of engagement. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope every one of you feel the blessings of the bond of brotherhood, and know that every man in here has the blessings of that bond to come together on Monday nights. Thank you, Clay, for your love and your open heart. And I wanted to share with you that what they're saying about no greater gift can a man giveth than to lay down his life for someone else. It feels like you're laying down your life. But when somebody stops and pauses and looks at you and says, how are you? And you're cared about, you feel like they're laying down their life. But what they're doing is investing that gift within that relationship. And I know when I felt that from you, Clay, in your helping and Lori's helping and our process of moving, it's like, I matter to you. I am so grateful and I'm so thankful for you caring about my life. So avail yourself of this gift of love. Our mattering of our engagement with this community matters equally as well. There is no space that God is not. God is in everything. God is in our finances. And for ease and grace for you while you travel, we want to invite you to have the opportunity for greater ease in giving, if that's something that you'd like to do, through the process of automatic committed giving. There's a bulletin or a flyer in your bulletin that you can choose to make that process automatic, and you don't even have to think about it. We also know that a lot of our gifts come in online. They come in from mail, and we also have that traditional way of giving. Every one of those gifts are important, and we thank you. Thank you for being a part. Thank you for being a contributor to this community. And however you give, we invite you to take that into your heart, your energy space, that space of vulnerability, and that space of the gift of who you are, and bless it with me together with this offering. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful. Thank you for joining us today. If you like the message, we invite you to like it or share it. And we also want to let you know that we're on Instagram, Twitter, and we'll see you again next Sunday on Facebook at 11:25.
We're a New Thought church where lives are transformed, and we welcome you to check us out. Check out our website, unityhills.org. We'll see you next week.
Namaste.